two completely separate deaths, both in the exact same location, on the same date, featuring suspects of the same name and victims of the exact same age in completely identical circumstances, but taking place 157 years apart. Some may question how this is even remotely possible. Well, we are about to take a look. On May the 26th, 1817, 20-year-old servant and housekeeper from Warwickshire, Mary Ashford, worked her regular shift hours before being due at a party at the local pub called the 3 Tons Inn, which is still standing to this day, known as the Tyburn House. So, this is the pub still standing 206 years later. Mary met up with her best friend Hannah Cox at her home in Erdington, where she left her work uniform. Hannah's mother lived nearby, to which the girls visited for Mary to retrieve some party clothes before arriving at the pub at 7:30 p.m. Inside the pub was 24-year-old Abraham Thornton. His father was a builder, and he himself was described as having a moderately strong physique. Some reports state that he was attractive and charming, while others described him as having a repulsive appearance. At the party, Thornton spotted Mary, and she immediately gained his interest. Upon questioning some locals, Thornton claimed to have actually slept with her sister 3 times in the past, and he allegedly claimed he wanted to sleep with Mary or he would die for it, though he later denied this statement ever being said. Throughout the entire party, Thornton was spotted showing Mary a lot of attention, and she seemed to actually enjoy his company. At around 11 p.m, Hannah managed to convince her friend to leave the party, but Abraham Thornton wasn't far behind. He walked with the girls and constantly stayed close to Mary, who advised that she would be going to her grandfather's house as it was closer to her work for the morning, despite still having to return to Hannah's home to retrieve her uniform anyway. Not long after, Hannah left Mary with Abraham Thornton and headed home. This was the very place where Mary and Abraham met at that party, but still, over 2 centuries later, we're still trying to find out what happened after that. At 2:45 a.m, now on May the 27th, 1817, a labourer saw Abraham leaving a friend's house with a woman and even spoke to him, but the female kept her head down and he was unable to confirm her identity. Just before 4 o'clock, Hannah was awoken by Mary, who had arrived at her home looking for her uniform. Her friend questioned what happened with Abraham, but Mary didn't seem bothered by the question, casually claiming that she had simply spent some time with him before leaving. She didn't seem anxious or scared, appearing to have been completely genuine, with nothing out of the ordinary being said. She quickly got changed into her uniform before rushing off, claiming that she needed to be home before her uncle left for the market. A drunk local left the pub at this point and saw her walking quickly in the opposite direction, and this would be the final known sighting of Mary Ashford being alive. At 6 a.m, labourer George Jackson noticed some women's items near a water-filled pit in Pipe Hayes Park in Erdington. One of the items was a woman's shoe with blood on it. Once running for help, the area was searched to discover the dead body of Mary Ashford. So the park originally was a bit bigger than it is today. We are talking 200 plus years ago, but the odds are they most likely walked down by the side of this brook. I believe this water actually extended further down, which is where the pond was that she was found in. A house is now where the pit was that Mary's body was discovered in, but this most likely would have been the area in which they walked from. Nearby were some footprints of a male and a female approaching the pit, but only the male footprints left the area afterwards. Naturally, suspicion quickly fell on Abraham Thornton, who claimed that he was with Mary until 4 AM before returning to the pub to meet with the landlord Daniel Clark. He was soon arrested and taken in for questioning, but strangely no notes were taken at the time, and Constable Thomas Dales was unable to remember a lot of specific details given to him by the suspect. However, when he was initially told the news that Mary Ashford was dead, Abraham Thornton allegedly seemed completely shocked and genuine. He claimed that he had sex with her in the fields before they talked and gazed at the sky until 3 AM. He then walked her back to her friend Hannah's house, where he waited outside, but she never came back, so he just left and never saw her again.
Okay, so this is the route that they would have taken. The pub is down that way, so Mary and Abraham would have walked down the field this way. This, possibly, more than likely, would have been the field in which he claims they had consensual sex. It could have been the area where he started chasing her down this way, which would have been where she was later found.
Once they thoroughly searched the man, Thornton's underclothing was found to have contained bloodstains. His shoes were checked and they did match the prints found at the scene of the crime, though it is worth noting that there was a lot of heavy rain, which may have damaged the legitimacy of the footprint evidence. The public were incredibly vocal in blaming Thornton for the murder. Pamphlets were handed out accusing him, poems were spread about him, and this made it incredibly difficult to find an unbiased jury to make an impartial decision. On August the 8th, 1817, hundreds of people filled the street in front of the county hall in Warwick, though due to the severity of the case, women weren't allowed to go in to watch the trial take place. The theory was that Thornton attempted to seduce Mary, but she rejected his advances. She then attempted to escape and he caught her and attacked. The autopsy showed that she hadn't eaten in 24 hours before her death, suggesting that she would have had no energy and therefore would have been unable to put up much of a fight. Though another theory was that she passed out due to the lack of food. Thornton then may have panicked, fearing the reaction of being caught with her in such a precarious position, and then disposed of her into the pit out of panic, where she then accidentally drowned. Factory workers William Lavelle and Joseph Bird were adamant the shoe prints at the scene of the crime were in fact Thornton's, but he maintained his innocence. The autopsy also showed that Mary was menstruating at the time of her death. Her body showed no signs of any violence, but she did have some slight vaginal lacerations. However, a surgeon did admit that these cuts could have easily been caused by consensual sex, and due to her menstruation, the blood found on his clothing didn't necessarily mean guilt. Abraham Thornton could have been telling the truth, but investigators had to dig deeper to find the answers. At 4:30 AM, just over half an hour since Mary was last seen alive, milkman William Jennings spotted Thornton walking by John Holden's farm, which was 2.5 miles away from the pit where the body was discovered. Just 20 minutes later, and he was spotted again by gamekeeper John Hayden at Castle Bromwich. Thornton spent 15 minutes talking to John about how he had just spent the night with a woman before he left, heading towards his father's house. Based on these two eyewitness accounts, it means Thornton would have had to have chased Mary down, killed her, and then travelled 2.5 miles to have these encounters in around 30 minutes. The jury were advised to not focus on whether or not he had consensual relations with Mary, but rather if he was just responsible for her death. But despite the evidence, the jury only deliberated for 6 minutes before concluding that he was in fact not guilty. This caused public outrage across the country before Mary's brother William filed an appeal on October 1st, 1817, leading to Abraham Thornton being arrested again and taken to London on the 28th. This entire trial spanned until April the following year, where Thornton actually made a challenge. This challenge was a legal fight to the death, known as a trial by battle, with Mary's brother William. If William were to win, Thornton would have been executed immediately. If not, he would be set free. However, William didn't respond to this challenge in time, and despite an angry mob waiting outside, Abraham Thornton was let go due to insufficient evidence. However, he struggled to get work after this due to the bad publicity, and soon relocated to the United States, where he dropped off the public radar. The murder of 20-year-old Mary Ashford was never solved. On May the 26th, 1974, 157 years later, to the day, 20-year-old Barbara Forrest was out dancing with her boyfriend Simon Belcher. In the early hours the next morning, Simon walked her to the bus stop at 1 a.m, but he would never see her again. That morning, Barbara was murdered, though her body wasn't found raped and strangled until June the 4th, a week later, in Pipe Hayes Park, the same location as Mary Ashford 157 years earlier, not far from her home.
Okay, so I couldn't actually find the precise location of where Barbara Forrest's body was found, but this is Chester Road. She lived further up there in Erdington, so it was, I'm assuming, one of the ditches along the bank here. This is the park. So really not that far from where Mary Ashford was also found, which is in the other direction over there. But still, the odds of these two deaths taking place 157 years apart with so many similarities are just astronomical.
Her 38-year-old colleague at the same children's home who lived on the same street fell onto the suspect list, as he was found with bloodstains on his clothes and provided an alibi from his mother, which turned out to be false. The suspect's name was Michael Ian Thornton. No evidence could back up this theory, and much like before, he was let go. Not only were both girls found in the same location, both murdered on the same day 157 years apart, both having been out dancing, but both had also expressed to loved ones that they had a bad feeling something was going to happen. Mary Ashford had confided in Hannah's mother that she had bad feelings about the week to come. Coincidentally, Barbara Forrest had told a colleague,
"This is going to be my unlucky month. I just know it. Don't ask me why."
Both girls were the exact same age. They even shared the exact same birthday, December the 31st, 1797 and 1954 respectively. And much like before, Barbara's sibling Erica appealed the court's decision, but like before, it was denied. To add to the creepy similarities, Whit Monday, also known as Pentecost Monday, is part of the Christian calendar, celebrated the day after Pentecost, which is 50 days after Easter Sunday. Due to this, it takes place on a different day each year, but even more bizarrely, Whit Monday took place on the exact same date in both 1817 and 1974. Furthermore, some statements have claimed that both women also shared almost identical similarities to one another as well. Barbara's sister Erica remained mostly silent for nearly 40 years before speaking out in 2012, demanding more work on the case using technology, as certain DNA evidence wasn't gathered at the scene of the crime. But much like before, this case has never been solved.
It's an interesting case, honestly. It's probably one of the strangest I've covered. And just looking at the sheer size of that park, the park is huge. It's not really surprising that a body could, be dumped there, let alone twice. But the similarities between both cases, I don't believe in anything supernatural, and it is just a very difficult pill to swallow. It's so difficult to wrap my mind around, and it's definitely the biggest coincidence, or the biggest list of coincidences that I have actually seen.
Two completely identical murders over a century and a half apart, and the similarities continue to baffle, and if there is any possible connection, we will just have to continue seeking answers.